Chapter 4 of The Beetle. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Icy Jumbo. The Beetle by Richard Marsh. Chapter 4. A Lonely Vigil. I knew that the light went out. For not the least singular, nor indeed the least distressing part of my condition was the fact that, to the best of my knowledge and belief, I never once lost consciousness during the long hours which followed. I was aware of the extinction of the lamp, and of the black darkness which ensued. I heard a rustling sound, as if the man in the bed was settling himself between the sheets. Then all was still. And throughout that interminable night I remained, my brain awake, my body dead, waiting, watching for the day. What had happened to me I could not guess. That I probably wore some of the external evidences of death, my instinct told me. I knew I did. Paradoxical though it may sound, I felt as a man might feel who had actually died, as, in moments of speculation in the days gone by, I had imagined it as quite possible that he would feel. It is very far from certain that feeling necessarily expires with what we call life. I continually asked myself if I could be dead. The inquiry pressed itself on me with awful iteration. Does the body die, and the brain, the I, the ego, still live on? God only knows. But then, the agony of the thought! The hours passed. By slow degrees the silence was eclipsed. Sounds of traffic, of hurrying footsteps, life, were ushers of the morn. Outside the window sparrows twittered. A cat mewed, a dog barked. There was the clatter of a milk can. Shafts of light stole past the blind, increasing in intensity. It still rained, now and again it pattered against the pane. The wind must have shifted, because, for the first time, there came on a sudden the clang of a distant clock striking the hour. 7. Then, with the interval of a lifetime between each chiming, 8, 9, 10. So far, in the room itself there had not been a sound. When the clock had struck 10, as it seemed to me years ago, there came a rustling noise from the direction of the bed. Feet stepped upon the floor, moving towards where I was lying. It was of course now broad day, and I, presently, perceived that a figure, clad in some queer-coloured garment, was standing at my side, looking down at me. It stooped, then knelt. My only covering was unceremoniously thrown from off me, so that I lay there in my nakedness. Fingers prodded me then and there, as if I had been some beast ready for the butcher's stall. A face looked into mine, and, in front of me, were those dreadful eyes. Then, whether I was dead or living, I said to myself that this could be nothing human. Nothing fashioned in God's image could wear such a shape as that. Fingers were pressed into my cheeks. They were thrust into my mouth. They touched my staring eyes, shut my eyelids, then opened them again. And, horror of horrors, the blubber lips were pressed to mine. The soul of something evil entered into me in the guise of a kiss. Then this travesty of manhood reascended to his feet, and said, whether speaking to me or to himself I could not tell, "Dead, dead, as good as dead, and better. We'll have him buried." He moved away from me. I heard a door open and shut, and knew that he was gone. And he continued gone throughout the day. I had no actual knowledge of his issuing out into the street, but he must have done so, because the house appeared deserted. What had become of the dreadful creature of the night before, I could not guess. My first fear was that he had left it behind him in the room with me. It might be as a sort of watchdog. But as the minutes and the hours passed, and there was still no sign or sound of anything living, I concluded that, if the thing was there, it was possibly as helpless as myself, and that during its owner's absence, at any rate, I had nothing to fear from its too pressing attentions. That, with the exception of myself, the house held nothing human, I had strong presumptive proof more than once in the course of the day. Several times, both in the morning and the afternoon, people without endeavoured to attract the attention of whoever was within. Vehicles, probably tradesmen's carts, drew up in front, their stopping being followed by more or less assiduous assaults upon the knocker and the bell. But in every case their appeals remained unheeded. Whatever it was they wanted, they had to go unsatisfied away. Lying there, torpid, with nothing to do but listen, I was, possibly, struck by very little, but it did occur to me that one among the callers was more persistent than the rest. The distant clock had just struck noon when I heard the gate open, and someone approached the front door. Since nothing but silence followed, I supposed that the occupant of the place had returned, and had chosen to do so as silently as he had gone. Presently, however, there came from the doorstep a slight but peculiar call, as if a rat was squeaking. It was repeated 3 times, and then there was the sound of footsteps quietly retreating, and the gate re-closing. Between 1 and 2 the caller came again. There was a repetition of the same signal. That it was a signal I did not doubt, followed by the same retreat. About 3 the mysterious visitant returned. The signal was repeated, and, when there was no response, fingers tapped softly against the panels of the front door. When there was still no answer, footsteps stole softly round the side of the house, and there came the signal from the rear, and then again tapping of the fingers against what was, apparently, the back door. No notice being taken of these various proceedings, the footsteps returned the way they went, and, as before, the gate was closed. Shortly after darkness had fallen, this assiduous caller returned, to make a 4th and more resolute attempt to call attention to his presence. From the peculiar character of his manoeuvres, it seemed that he suspected that whoever was within had particular reasons for ignoring him without. He went through the familiar pantomime of the 3 squeaky calls, both at the front door and the back, followed by the tapping of the fingers on the panels. This time, however, he also tried the window panes. I could hear, quite distinctly, the clear yet distinct noise of what seemed like knuckles rapping against the windows behind. Disappointed there, he renewed his efforts at the front. The curiously quiet footsteps came round the house, to pause before the window of the room in which I lay, and then something singular occurred. While I waited for the tapping, there came instead the sound of some one or something scrambling on to the window-sill, as if some creature, unable to reach the window from the ground, was endeavouring to gain the vantage of the sill. Some ungainly creature, unskilled in surmounting such an obstacle as a perpendicular brick wall. There was the noise of what seemed to be the scratching of claws, as if it experienced considerable difficulty in obtaining a hold on the unyielding surface. What kind of a creature it was, I could not think. I was astonished to find that it was a creature at all. I had taken it for granted that the persevering visitor was either a woman or a man. If, however, as now seemed likely, it was some sort of animal, the fact explained the squeaking sounds, though what except a rat did squeak like that was more than I could say, and the absence of any knocking or ringing. Whatever it was, it had gained the summit of its desires, the window-sill. It panted as if its efforts at climbing had made it short of breath. Then began the tapping. In the light of my new discovery, I perceived, clearly enough, that the tapping was hardly that which was likely to be the product of human fingers. It was sharp and definite, rather resembling the striking of the point of a nail against the glass. It was not loud, but in time, it continued with much persistence.